Alright, now back to the random stuff. Looks like we've got 31 that we're gonna roll. So let's see what we get. 8 is Reborn to master the blade. Okay, isekai time, probably. Let's see what it do. Well, it's actually not an isekai, apparently, but, we still get the insanely overpowered main character, who kills a dragon in the first episode as a baby. So, I think that is the sharpest power creep I have ever seen in an anime, ever. Where is the tension from here on out? The main character killed a dragon as a baby. There's nowhere to go from there. Yeah, this was mostly so fucking boring because it's like exposition, 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 exposition. And literally the moment where I shouted at the screen, "Can we go 5 seconds without exposition?" is when a dragon burst through the window. So I was like, thank you! Something happened! Finally! It's so fucking boring, and then immediately into there are no stakes. Main character can kill a dragon as a baby. There's not gonna be any stakes. And for a hot second, I thought we were gonna have like a really interesting, or not really interesting, but kind of interesting main character where it's like he founded a nation and led it until he was an old man, and his dying wish was to be reborn so that he could, instead of focusing on politics, focus purely on his sword skills. And the first thing he does is use a magic blast to kill a dragon as a baby. Next. Alright, get this fucking shit off the list. I hate it. Let's move on. How much do I have? 30? We're gonna roll 30s. Let's see what comes next. It is 12. RouKin. No clue whatsoever. Is this the one where it's a fantasy world but the main character does money manipulation? I can't remember. Let's find out. Alright. I watched RouKin, the first episode, saving up 80,000 gold for something, whatever long-ass light novel title. Yeah, I got through the first episode, and I didn't outright hate it. There's a lot of stuff that I thought were some really cool ideas in it. Like, the way this girl gets isekai'd into this world was pretty unique. I think she's like getting hit on by some dudes, and when she like fights back against them, like because they're pestering her, they accidentally push her off a cliff, which was kind of interesting. So I was like, okay, I'm coming off like Delicious Party Precure still, so I'm in the mood for like some girl moments. I was hoping we would get to see some of that in the series, and I think based on what we've seen, I could, if I were to continue this, I could probably see more of those moments. Like, she kills a fucking wolf in this first episode, and then there's some heavy tonal whiplash in that scene, but also, like, when it shows, like, that flashback of how she got isekai'd, it also lumps in a bunch of other flashback stuff about how her parents and brother are dead, and how she wasn't doing good in school. And I'm like, this doesn't need to be here right now. Like, you should have saved this for like 3 minutes later. Don't lump it in with the actual isekaiing, because it gets confusing. Because I'm thinking like, why is this relevant right now? When was this in the timeline? What's going on? So, like, in terms of like the layout of shots, it gets kind of confusing for some reason. And there are some other moments like that too. And I also liked the like main mechanic of this series, in that like her OP ability for this isekai series is that she can world hop. So like she can jump to any specific spot on Earth or on the isekai planet that she knows of. I'm like, that's a cool idea. What I would be very curious to see what they do with that, like bringing inventions over from Earth to sell to this isekai world. That sounds like a cool idea. But then they do the isekai thing. And by the isekai thing, I mean they make it too fucking easy. Like, it's all of a sudden, like, she starts having a conversation with this god character that ended up sending her to this isekai world in the first place. And he's like, yes, it appears that you also have super healing abilities. I'm like, okay, sure. And then she's like, hey, can I have like the ability to understand other languages? And he's like, sure. And he just gives it to her. And I literally shouted at the screen, suck shit. Like, it was so cool. Like, watching her learn to speak other languages, like trying to figure out how to speak the language of the isekai world and slowly figuring out words and what they mean. It would have been so cool to see her do that for like half of this first season. But then all of a sudden, it's like, nope, we gotta make it easy. We gotta make this easier for the main character so that we can get to the OP part of the series. Suck shit. Fuck you. What are you doing? Get real. It's also not as bad looking as I thought it would be, because I remember seeing the trailer for this one, and the trailer looked fucking awful. The anime looks a little bit better. Not super great. The compositing is still pretty rough. But the character designs are decent. I did like the older brother character, who's just like this otaku. He was like when she first jumps back to her real world, she's like, wait, why would I go back? And then she gets like a little earworm from her brother who's like, do you really need a reason to save a cute girl? I'm like, okay, I gotcha. So, yeah, I would like to continue this, but I don't have any confidence that it's going to that it's going to challenge the Mitsuha, our lead character, in any notable way. It seems hell-bent on making this as easy for her as possible. So fuck you. Alright, RouKin is off the list. Let's see what we roll next. It is 14. Urusei Yatsura 2022. Okay. I'm super hit and miss with Rumiko Takahashi stuff. Let's see how I do with this one. Well, that was hella frustrating. I got through 6 episodes of the Urusei Yatsura remake, and I feel real conflicted about it, because, like, on paper, like, everything about it I should fucking hate, because, like, main character is, like, a total scumbag, and yet still constantly has people fawning over him. None of the relationships make any actual sense in this series. There's no reason for anyone to like anyone. in this series, or in particular, there's no reason for anyone to like Ataru in this series, I don't think. I don't understand why Lum likes him so much. On the other hand, this show is so fucking funny. Or it was for a while. Like, this show has basically no rules. Nothing is, like, off limits in terms of, like, what fits with the story of this series. Whether it's, like, genre variety or just premise variety or just whatever the fuck the writers want to come up with. They will throw absolute batshit stuff at the screen and just run with it. And the comedic timing is so quick and so on the ball that you don't really have time to stop and think. Like, it doesn't give you the 5 seconds to realize, hold on, this is all horse shit. Because it's just so fast and so quick that it just keeps you entertained. And that's one of the things that I really have to give Rumiko Takahashi credit for. She's the author of Urusei Yatsura, the original author of this, way back in the was it early 80s, maybe late 70s? I don't remember exactly when this manga started. But she did Urusei Yatsura, and she's probably like one of the most famous and prolific manga authors of all time. She also did Inuyasha, Ranma 1/2. She's prolific. And yet, the only series that I've finished of hers is Mermaid Saga. I've dropped pretty much everything else that she's written. Like, I dropped Ranma after like 25 volumes, I think. I dropped Inuyasha after like 28 or like 30 volumes or something. I dropped Mai Sonikoku real early on. Could not fucking stand that. In fact, I dropped Urusei Yatsura the manga after chapter 1 because I could not fucking stand it. But, getting back on topic, the one thing I must give Takahashi credit for is she really knows how to, like, make you interested. Like, she really makes you compelled to watch or read more. I think I noticed this most clearly in 1 Pound Gospel, which is another one that I got through. It's a 4-volume series, and I think I only made it through 2 volumes. It's like, I fucking hated all the characters in it, but there was something about it that made me want to keep reading. And watching the Urusei Yatsura remake is very much like that. There's something compelling about it, aside from the horniness, which we will get to in a sec. But there is something like compelling of maybe, just maybe, there will be progress. Considering that this manga is like 300 something chapters long, or maybe that's Ranma 1/2. I don't know how long Urusei Yatsura is. I think it's like 200 chapters or something. But considering that, it's going to be real slow progress, even with a remake, cutting a ton of shit out and speeding everything up. So I don't think that's not going to be the appeal of this kind of series. The appeal is going to be in the moment-to-moment comedy, which this show has. I will give it that. But, again, when you stop to think about what's going on for more than 5 seconds, you get completely fucking frustrated at everyone involved. Like, Ataru, like, his scum fuckery is really funny, but then when you actually think about it in the context of this world, he becomes like a total shitbag. And it makes the show like slightly less fun to watch, like knowing that he's just constantly tossing women aside for the sake of like his pure desires and stuff. It's just, it gets frustrating after a while, especially after they like tried to have like a decently emotional moment in episode 5. I was like, as I was waiting for it, because like I was like, I knew there's gonna be an emotional moment here. I can see it getting set up where Lum does something for him and he actually like tries to reciprocate feelings for once. And then after episode 5, they immediately go back to the scumfuckery bullshit. Like, no mention of it whatsoever. And goddamn if that episode really didn't have me. It got me. It got me. Especially because, like, this is a pretty show. This is a good-looking remake. Normally, with a lot of the times with remakes, we get this, like, soulless garbage crap. Like, fucking, I know I got heat for it already before, but I'll say it again. The Fruits Basket remake looks mid as fuck. It's not good. From the screen caps I've seen, from the clips that I've seen of it, the Rurouni Kenshin remake looks mid as fuck. But the Urusei Yatsura remake looks pretty good. It's by David Production, and you can definitely see some of the JoJo-ness slipping in every now and then. But, like, the character designs are really good. That's another thing. It was, like, for, like, forever, I never got the appeal of Lum as, like, in terms of, like, a waifu. I was like, is she hot? I don't think so. And then I watched this. I finally saw her in animation and was like, oh, she's extremely hot. Okay, I'm on board. Cool. Yeah, Lum is hot. Even though like the costume design for all the girls in this isn't typically my thing. Like these fucking weirdo S&M outfits and shit, not typically my thing. But the girls are still hot. Like Lum in particular, they really capture what makes this character attractive. It's just that she's tied to this story where where her love interest is this scumfuck asshole who does not give a flying fuck about her at all. And so it makes you question why she's still here. But yeah, this show was frustrating because on the one hand, it was very funny for a while. And also, this is one of the few anime that actually acknowledges that the main character wants to fuck. Like, for as much of a scumbag as Ataru is, I gotta at least give him credit for that. He wants to fuck. He is a horny motherfucker, and he wants to fuck. With a capital F. And that is a shockingly low bar for anime because there are so many fucking anime rom-coms where the main guy is just this sterile, not even sterile, just absolute, like, does not understand how to handle sexual feelings character. Like, that is such a fucking shitty trope in anime that I hate. And finally we get a character where he's like, yeah, I want to fuck. I have a penis and I want to fuck. And they attach it to this absolute scumbag. Where I'm like, well, monkey's paw curled. Okay. Yeah. God, this show is frustrating. I don't think I'm going to watch... Yeah, I'm not going to watch any more of it. I already decided I'm not going to watch any more of it. I might check out some of the movies just because this show is genuinely funny. Like, I just, on a whim, picked up Beautiful Dreamer a few years ago because it's directed by Mamoru Oshii, and I've heard it's, like, really fucking good, so I'll try that out at some point. Maybe I'll try out, like, some of the classic Urusei Yatsura stuff, see how Mamoru Oshii handles, like, TV episodes of this show. But as for now, the frustration won out in the end, and so I gotta give this one a drop. Alright, Urusei Yatsura is unfortunately off the list. What does that drop us down to 28? So let's see what we roll next. It is 18. High card. No clue at all what this is. Let's find out. Well, that certainly wasn't the show I was expecting it to be. I was kind of expecting some kind of a Joker game poker kind of thing. And instead I got crazy battle anime. Unfortunately, I only made it a little bit into the second episode of this before I realized that it was not for me. It's not, like, bad. It's not outright bad, but there are a lot of, like, signs that, A, it's not going to be interesting enough for me to justify watching a whole season of it outside of, like, the first episode or so. And B, it tries, I think it's trying to be, like, cool and flashy and a little bit edgy, but it doesn't quite have the competency for that. It falls just a hair short. And that hair is like the thin dividing line between, wow, that was really cool, and that could have been better. It's just, this feels like not a generic supernatural action anime, but a very standard supernatural action anime. Like, it has more ideas than something like Revenger, which, if you'll recall, is a show that I actually finished, although I probably could have done without finishing Revenger. But, it doesn't... And I'm not going to say it doesn't fully commit like Revenger does, but it doesn't have that extra special sauce that a really good writer like Urobuchi can give. And again, Revenger's not even all that great. I think I gave it like a light 6 or something. I gave it some kind of 6. So, this, like, the high card falls just a hair short in every category to the point where I'm like, I don't really feel like watching it. And then there are, like, these really, like, kind of infuriating moments here and there. It's like, that's not how this weapon works. That's not how physics works, so on and so forth. But the thing that made me actually, like, stop watching the show was in the beginning of episode 2, like, there's this butler character, like, explaining the plot of the show, and, like, the main character goes, "What are you on about?" I'm like, what do you mean, what is he on about? He's explaining the thing that you have been confused about this entire time. Or that you've been, like, that you have been unconsciously part of this entire time, but you seem to recognize that you were part of. It was real infuriating. And the same visually, too. It falls just a hair short in all the regards. The character designs are super bland, not interesting in any way. The character personalities are very not interesting in any way. Like, the main character's got, like, this kind of, like, heart of gold thief kind of thing, but it's just super stock standard kind of stuff. That's this show. It's got some cool flashy bits to it. If you're super interested in what all these X playing cards, what their powers are going to be, that will probably be the only draw of this show. And some of the powers are pretty cool. Like, turning whatever you touch into marbles. That's pretty cool. Leaving a fucking bloody viscera in your wake if you marble someone's arm off. That's kind of cool. But that alone isn't enough to carry the show for me, so we'll move on. Alright, high card is off the list. Let's figure out what we're watching next. Crank this down to 27. We're getting 14, which is Sugar Apple Fairy Tale. Okay. I've only seen some screenshots of this one, but this seems like it might be up my alley if the writing is competent enough. So let's give it a spin. Alright, I just finished up the first core of Sugar Apple Fairy Tale. That was a fun time. In some ways, exactly what I expected, and in other ways, very much not what I expected. I also don't. Here's a little fun tip about me. I don't really read plot synopses when I go into shows. So most of the stuff that I didn't expect was probably stuff that was in the plot synopsis, but I like going into stuff and just seeing what it has to offer. So, like, for example, the slavery dynamic of the series, was not expecting that at all. I was just expecting some kind of cute, fancy fantasy world involving some kind of food thing. And I definitely got that, but the slavery aspect definitely caught me off guard, and I think it was handled pretty well. It's not particularly deep, but it does have a much more systemic understanding of slavery in some respects. Like, it really, there's a concept, you could say, of allyship versus solidarity, you could say, in terms of, like, class struggles, race struggles, gender struggles, etc. Where it's like, allyship is, I support you with my words. And solidarity is, I'm going to actively work towards helping you be more equal. And I think the first arc of this series kind of very briefly touches on that idea. If you want a really clear idea of what this looks like in fiction, Across the Spider-Verse does this really well. Like, you can look at the actions, the allyship of Peter B. Parker and Gwen, versus the solidarity of Hobie and I forgot what the tech girl's name is. But I'm getting off track now. This series does very briefly touch on the fact of, like, you can say all you like, but you are still participating in this system, versus you have to actually act in a way that proves that you mean the things that you say. In regards to this enslavement of fairies in this world. And I think the first, like, arc, the first 4 episodes, touch on that in a really interesting way. Not super deep, it's not super deep or nuanced, but it at least touches on that idea in a way that a lot of other fiction of this type just doesn't. It really never... We're finally starting to reach the point where it's like, hey, you can say all that you like, but if you're not down in the trenches with everyone else, then it's pointless. And so the initial relationship between Anne and Shal in this really puts that in frames that in an interesting way with how she relates to how Anne relates to Shal as his master, even though she wants to be one of the good humans. See, she's one of the good white people. I mean, good humans. It's really hard to listen. I understand that Japan has a very different concept of slavery than America does. But it is pretty clear in this series that this series leans more into the American concept of slavery, where it is a lot more systemic rather than individual, and a lot more racist. So I found that very interesting. It was definitely something I was not expecting out of the series, and I was pleasantly surprised by. Aside from that, very pleasant series to watch overall. I always have the urge for, like, some really good shoujo angst, some shoujo spiciness to it, because, like, shonen rom-coms are good in their own ways. Like Kaguya-sama, is Kaguya-sama shonen? I think that's actually seinen. I'm not sure, but, like, shonen and seinen rom-coms are nice in their own ways, but, like, shoujo and josei rom-coms, they're spicy, man. They really know how to, like, get you. They really know how to, they really understand a certain sensuality. And Sugar Apple Fairy Tale really nails that. With the immense sexual tension between An and Shal. Now, I will say, sometimes this comes with some drawbacks, because in, like, end of episode 10, I was like, we get the, romantic misunderstanding because you only saw half of the conversation, whatever. I was like, you get one. You get one. And to my surprise, they resolved it almost immediately in the next episode. They did not drag that out at all. So I was also happy about that. I was like, cool. We didn't dwell on this. Character had a problem. The problem was addressed. Awesome. Normal human beings. And fairies. Yeah, this was... I really enjoyed all the characters in this. What took me off guard most was probably Jonas. He has some very nuanced character... Is nuanced the right word? He has some very interesting characterization throughout the series. Like, at first you think he's just like some Hillrod fuckboy. Not fuckboy. Hillrod, like, just not even, no, that's not the right words at all. He's like this kind of a chump almost in the beginning, like just some kind of dolt romantically chasing after his romantic interest. And the turn at the end of the first arc where he just goes full on villain was very interesting. And then, like, he just sticks around through the series as this sniveling, whiny little man, who, like, gradually learns to not be a snivelly, whiny little man. Not all the way, but, yeah, I really found him to be both frustrating and, interesting. Frustrating in a good way of, like, Jesus Christ, you are such a whiny little bitch boy. But it suits his character really well. And I found along the lines of that, I found the gender politics of the series to be pretty interesting too. Like, it's a very girl power kind of series. Sometimes simplistically so, but in other times it's, like, really interesting in that, like, again, it understands this kind of discrimination as a system rather than individuals doing individual actions. And it even touches on that in terms of, like, how religion feeds into this. Like, again, as someone from a Western perspective, religion historically has put women down in a lot of ways. And so the fake religion that they come up with in this show reflects that in a very Adam and Eve. In fact, I would say it's a direct reference to Adam and Eve, or almost, where it's like, the wife of the king betrayed humanity in favor of the fairies, which would represent the serpent in the Garden of Eden. And then that's what causes a lot of strife upon the world, and therefore women are seen as lesser, which is the case with a lot of Christian religions. So I found that to be very interesting and a very accurate analogy for the world that we live in. So, yeah, the themes of this show are really solid. Not that solely along the lines of solely in the fact that they understand how systems work, how systems of belief work, how institutions work. And the narrative is, like, not amazing by any stretch, but it is above competent. I would say it is above average in terms of its competency. It's fun, it's compelling, The characters are likable. Not particularly deep in any way, but they are likable and fun, and I like the chemistry between them. And I like seeing them interact in this world. This is a surprisingly interesting world. Which I think could have been brought to life a little bit more with the visuals, but in some ways the visuals are actually really solid. I was actually kind of surprised by how good some of the sugar art, the sugar confection art was in the series. Like when they want to convey the idea of this is a really good looking piece, they really convey that. They really convey the idea of this looks really good. Like especially Anne's piece at the very end, the climbing rose cradled by the fairy wing. That was really dang beautiful. In other ways, though, the series is a little bland. It's not outright bad, except for a few moments, but it is a JC Staff series, in that you're not going to find a lot of really impressive stuff in this. And it also does the same thing that Demon Girl Next Door does, where it has this really out of place highlight in the hair, like right here, like right at the top of the head. And I noticed that like immediately because it stands out even more in this series than it does in Demon Girl Next Door. And I was like, I wonder if it's the same staff member. And sure enough, both of those shows share a color designer. So I was like, well, that's where that came from. So that's this person's thing. I forgot who the color designer's name was, but that was probably their choice. Or maybe the character designer's choice, or somewhere up there. Either way, it seems like it is because of a staff connection. And it looks worse here than it does in Demon Girl. Like, especially, like, Jonas, like, he's got blonde hair, but that little highlight is, like, blue? He's got just a blue highlight on the top of his head, and it's so damn distracting. Like, sometimes it's fine with, like, Shal's, it's like a violet highlight on top of indigo hair, so it's not as distracting, but it's not particularly good. But yeah, I really enjoyed the series. This first core of this series left off on a cliffhanger. Really, really frustrating cliffhanger. So I guess once I get to the summer seasonals, I'll finally get to the second core and see how that goes. But for now, let's figure out where to put the first core on the list. Alright, Sugar Apple Fairy Tale Core 1 is done, and for now, we're going to put it right under here, and you get a decent 7. Definitely enjoyed that. Looking forward to Core 2 sometime in the future. But for now, I believe it's about time to jump to the end caps here, so we're going to do Trigun Stampede. I rewatched the original Trigun a few months ago, so I'm ready for this remake to see how it do. Alright, well, I finished Trigun Stampede, but to be honest, I kind of wish I hadn't. This really tanked in the back half of this series. For a wide variety of reasons. It didn't start out that way. I thought it started out pretty good. It started off good, and I thought it was just going to get better. Well, I don't know about that, but I was hoping it would at least maintain the good that it had at the beginning. But to start with, as I think I mentioned already, I rewatched the original Trigun before this, probably, what was that, like 2 months ago now, I think? That one still holds up really well. I haven't read the manga yet. The Dark Horse Deluxe Edition is coming out in November, I think? No, it's December. It's coming out in December, so won't be getting to the manga until then. So I don't have that to compare, but I have heard that this is also not like the manga. Now, again, I can't verify that, but if that is true, then what exactly was the point of this remake? Because, like, the original Trigun, I think, is, like, mostly filler. Or at least a huge chunk of filler. Now, that's not a bad thing. We're going to get to why that's actually a good thing in a little bit. But if you're remaking this series, if you're remaking an anime that initially didn't follow the original manga, and you're still not going to follow the original manga, why did you make it? Because this is an infinitely worse version of the series in all aspects. Except maybe the animation, because it's a Studio Orange anime, and Studio Orange is still the only fucking anime studio that knows how to make good CG anime, and this looks really good. I have, like, a few complaints. Like, there's some extra, like, movement flourishes that just feel tacked on. Like, the character will just do a little extra movement that feels like they just kind of added that so that the character wasn't standing still the whole time, and it felt a little unnatural. But outside of that, really strong character designs. I think Vash's redesign is pretty cool. The action is really solid. The camera work's really solid. Because it's all CG, they can do a lot more interesting things with the camera that aren't as hugely taxing as they would be in like a 2D medium. I will say, though, this is probably, I don't know, this might be my least favorite looking Studio Orange production in comparison to Beastars and Land of the Lustrous. But I don't think that's on the fault. I don't think that's the fault of the animation, because it's good animation. The artwork's really good. The lighting is really good. Color direction is really good. There's some really cool abstract symbolism that they use throughout this series that's good. But the thing that I don't like about the way this looks is more of a, like, base level, like, design philosophy. And this leads me to, like, the first problem that I ran into with this series. Even back when I still thought it was good, this is no longer a Western. Like, at all. Trigun, the original Trigun anime was very much a Western. Trigun Stampede is a sci-fi series. Now, the original Trigun obviously had some sci-fi elements scattered throughout it, but at its core, the aesthetic and the feel of it was a Western. You felt like you were in the Old West, in these old, like, beaten down towns, in this very almost archaic kind of setting. And that made it contrast very nicely with the more sci-fi aesthetics that very briefly, like, show up throughout the series. But in Stampede, the sci-fi is so present that it completely dominates the Western elements. And so I just don't understand that decision at all. Because it's also, like, not as good looking sci-fi, not as cool looking sci-fi. It looks like very generic sci-fi compared to, like, the, like, when did the original Trigun? Was that 2000 or 99? I can't remember. 98. Somewhere around that. I think it was 2000. But, like, the sci-fi of that era, like, the way that it was designed still meshed really well with the Western setting, despite being very different from the Western-ish, from the like the older technology being used there. This one does not at all. This feels like very like super future sci-fi. And it just doesn't stick. And it also that also leads to like the full back like third of this series is completely dominated by the sci-fi elements in the most boring way possible. Like the plot of this about Vash being someone who like could open portals to other dimensions to use energy. It's a very Full Metal 2003 idea. But it's done in a super sci-fi way that's very boring and uninteresting. Did not give a flying fuck about anything in the back third of this series. It was a huge letdown. Not only one of the reasons for that is because Knives is infinitely worse in this series than he is in... Well, not infinitely worse, but he is significantly worse than he is in the original Trigun. In the original Trigun, Knives doesn't show up till well over half... Well, you see him briefly throughout the first half of the series, but he doesn't become like a character until well over halfway through the series. So like 16, 17 episodes in. Maybe a little sooner than that, but like in this one, Knives is here like episode 1, I think. It's like episode 1 or episode 2. And he is a very prominent presence. Like he is killing people on screen in like episode 3, I think. Which, by the way, slight tangent. This show is edgy. This show is significantly edgier in comparison to the original Trigun. Big, like, people getting turned into blood mists. It's a very anime edgy kind of way, and it did not fit the vibe of Trigun at all. That did not fit at all. But anyway, so they drop Knives in early, and like you would think that would give him more time to be characterized, but it really doesn't. They don't really do anything interesting with him by making him appear this early. He's just there more. Now, what I like, and they also kind of cocked up why Knives has it out for Vash, because like it's very obvious in the beginning of Stampede that Knives is fucking with Vash. She is fucking with the things that Vash cares about. And I'm like, now, knowing the original series, I was okay. I'm like, okay, this makes sense. But the reason he fucks with Vash so much in the original series is because Vash blows away half of his body in the original series. Like, Vash fucks him up. And that's not here in this until the very last episode where Vash, I'm pretty sure, kills him. Just blows him away, along with the entire city of July, which I kind of saw coming because July was blown up before the start of the original series. But it doesn't make, like, it's significantly less effective knowing that, oh, Knives is just fucking with Vash just because, I guess. Like, it works way better in the original series. It's like, oh, like, Vash was pushed to the point of where he accidentally activated his, like, super gun hand and blew away half of Knives' body. And that's why Knives is fucking with him constantly throughout the original series. Like, he is getting revenge on Vash while also trying to win him over to his side. In this one, he's just fucking with him. And we don't see... Actually, I would say this series characterizes Knives less than the original series. Because we don't get... In the flashback stuff, Vash is the one getting all the characterization, not Knives. And so Knives just comes across... So when Knives, like, comes out as this, like, maniacal villain who's crashing all of the siege ships into the planet to kill everybody, it doesn't make as much sense. Like, they backtrack it a little bit and say, like, he's doing it because the humans are using the plants to... are, like, using the power of the plants. And since Knives and Vash are plants, they want... Knives sides with the plants. Which, I'm not saying that's not a legitimate motive, but this brings me to, like, the biggest problem I have with this new series is the whole point of the original Trigun is that the reason Knives wants to fucking kill everyone is because humanity sucks in his eyes. Like, it's not that it, like, the plants thing is certainly part of it, but it's also Knives experiencing the evil of humanity and seeing that these people are, that humans are petty pieces of shit is what forms his ideology that leads him to being a genocidal maniac. And that's why Vash's no-kill philosophy works so well in the original series, because he fundamentally believes the exact opposite, that any human can be redeemed, and that every life is worth living. And the original series gives you, like, 20 episodes of Vash interacting with different people and seeing their stories and seeing how they live their lives before we get to that final ideological confrontation, where we can say, yes, that I can see both sides of the argument, but ultimately Vash's argument is stronger. And we don't get that at all in Stampede. We get, like, 3 stories tops. No, I would... Yeah, like, 3 stories tops. Really only 2 of them that don't involve, like, someone who was manipulated by Knives into doing stuff. Like, we get the town of... I forgot what they call it in Stampede, but it's basically January. Like, all the months in this... All of those cities in this world have month naming schemes. Like... And that's why I thought this series might have been good, because the first arc, the first 3 episodes, does kind of hammer that in. Like, we get the duality of humans being good, and humans being shitty, and also humans looking out for their own interest, which ends up costing Vash in the end. And then we get, like, God, what was the 4th episode of this? That was the one where they introduced Wolfwood, right? I think. I don't even remember what the point of it was. But they introduced him, and that had another one, decent one. But then they just kind of give up on that idea, and that's why the filler in the original series was so good. Like, not all of the stories were great, not all of the writing was great, but it gave you so much more time to see Vash interact with humanity, and give us a clue of what humanity is like through Vash's eyes, or through Knives' eyes, or through the eyes of people working under Knives, and seeing how easily humans can be manipulated or turned against each other or something. And that barely comes up at all in Stampede. And it sucks. Because that's the entire ideological crux of this series. Stampede still has that in it. That's still a core part of Stampede, but they cut out all of the stuff that makes that idea important and makes it matter. So, what is Stampede if it doesn't have that? What is Trigun without the human stories? I would argue that it's nothing. It's just a really weird mashup. It's a really weird sci-fi series with Western elements in it, if you don't have that human element to it. And we could get on a whole discussion about how that feeds into the Western aesthetic of it as well, but that's a whole other topic. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm left with at the end of this. What is the point of Trigun if you're going to cut out all of the human stories and focus on the plot? Because the plot does not matter in Trigun. Now, again, I haven't read the manga, but again, from what I've heard, this really doesn't follow the manga that much either. At least to a certain degree. So, and it's also like just worse off for it. Like, Trigun is about Vash interacting with humanity and seeing all of the different facets humanity has to offer and still choosing to defend them even if it costs him his life. And when you cut that out of Trigun, you're left with like a mediocre sci-fi series. Now there was one moment in the back third where they kind of try to put this back in, where it's like Zazie the Beast brings up the fact that humans ruined Earth and they're coming to this planet now, which is where all the and since Zazie the Beast is basically like a hive mind of the worms that lived on the planet, he has a reason to hate humans. Like these are, to him, the humans are colonizers who are coming here and fucking up his planet now. That's a cool idea, and it gets about 4 minutes of screen time. God, this show sucks. Now, aside from all the, like, big ideas, yeah, there are some enjoyable elements of this. I think Millie is a bit more of an interesting character than, well, I don't know. She's a different character than, not Millie, Meryl. Yeah, Meryl is a different character than she was in the original, and I don't think she's worse off for it. I don't think she's better off for it, but she is a very different character in this, and probably the most interestingly written one. And I liked her, like, reporter senior, Roberto. He was fun. He was just a fun guy to follow. Wolfwood is very different in the series. And he probably had, like, his flashback to the orphanage was probably the most visually cool part of the series. And I did think that had a really good character hook to it. Yeah, like, Vash is good in this. Like, again, he's severely undercut by not having as many experiences with humans. But he's good. He's a fun character to follow. He seems a little bit more competent than he was in the original. I hate his new fucking power. His power, though, in this, like, his superpower is opening basically black holes into other dimensions. And see, that's another thing, is like, that's another reason why this series doesn't work, because the reason in the original series why Vash is a wanted man and why he brings destruction everywhere he goes in the original is because he starts off as someone who has already blown up July, the city. Now, that's how this series ends. But, like, he starts in the original, he starts as a character who has this gigantic super weapon in his arm that he's not able to control. And so that's why he views himself as dangerous, as well as the entire world. He doesn't have that power in this. And so the only reason that he is the humanoid typhoon in this is because Knives is fucking with him constantly and constantly throwing all of his men at Vash. So it's not his fault in any way whatsoever. So, like, I don't... It's just not... It's not good. Originally, I had this, like, sitting at, like, a... Well, we'll get to scores later, but I am severely disappointed in Trigun Stampede. It's got good character moments, the action's good, but it fundamentally misses the idea of what these characters are and what they are trying to accomplish, and it feels so very hollow, especially in the back third of this series, where I just my eyes were just glazing over as they were fucking spewing sci-fi bullshit at me. It was stupid sci-fi anime bullshit that you've seen 1,000 times in other series. It's just not good. So that's kind of a bummer. Alright, Trigun Stampede is complete. And unfortunately, you're going pretty low on the list. Nope. And you're getting a strong 4. Originally, I was feeling a light 5, but I really did not like this series the more I talked through what I didn't like about it. So I'm going to say it was bad. So that's unfortunate.